Tonight on Bridge City News, Lethbridge had another snowfall warning. Today we talk with a doctor about how to protect yourself from a snow shoveling injury. The City of Lethbridge has come up with a list of what is open and what's not for Family Day. We have the details. And an 11-year-old Toronto area girl was found dead shortly after a nationwide Amber Alert was issued. Good evening, thanks so much for joining us. Police are dealing with a barrage of complaints about a late-night Amber Alert issued in the case of a missing 11-year-old Toronto area girl. They say it appears some people value their own convenience over the safety of a child. Ria Rajkumar was found dead in her father's home in Brampton, a short time after police issued the Amber Alert. The alert helped lead to her father's arrest about 130 kilometers north of Toronto. Police plan to charge the father, 41-year-old Rupesh Rajkumar, with first-degree murder. Environment Canada issued another snowfall warning for our city today. The agency says we've received up to 10 centimeters of the white stuff so far. Shoveling during and after heavy snowfall is a fact of life for many. It always feels strenuous and, according to doctors, downright dangerous, especially if you're out of shape. Local chiropractor Dr. Aaron Bridge digs deep and tells BCN's Loris Alexander what we can do to prevent shoveling injuries.
It is hard, it is heavy, it is quite literally a pain in the back.
It's very important to try and use proper technique when you're shoveling the snow. Ideally, you're going to push the snow away instead of lifting it if at all possible. You're going to bend at the knees. You're going to support the back properly by engaging your core. All those things can help it make it a successful venture so you don't sustain injury.
Many in Lethbridge are likely feeling those low back pains after today's snowfall.
You're going to have to vary your approach depending on the snow that you're facing. If it's a heavy wet snow or a hard, really packed down snow, you're going to have to take your time. Sometimes you have to chisel away the pieces before you can shovel them away instead of using the shovel and trying to do it all at once.
But of equal importance, the safety of the snow shoveler.
One of the most common mistakes that I see people making is they think they can just jump up off the couch, having done no physical activity, maybe for a long time, and head out there and shovel. It is a physical activity, and so sometimes you need to warm up for it. There's some good stretches that you could do to prepare yourself so you reduce the risk of injury.
Overall, don't overdo it. Listen to your body and stay safe in this weather. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Lethbridge is filled with a lot of history, and some of that history began 100 years ago with the inception of the public library. The Galt Museum has partnered with the library to celebrate some of that very rich history.
There was a real drive in Lethbridge to have a public library founded. A lot of citizens pushed for that right from the very earliest community's history. And there was informal libraries established, or private reading rooms that people had to pay a membership to borrow library books from. That sort of evolved into a public library system, and in 1919 the first Lethbridge Public Library Board was founded, and it's been an institution in the community ever since. This is an opportunity to think about how the role of the library has changed in the community, but how that place has been important in gathering different people and connecting them to ideas and to things that they might not experience otherwise. So it's been a cornerstone in the cultural life of the community, and it remains so, and we're looking forward to seeing how that evolves into the future.
The exhibit has a typewriter where people can leave comments about their experiences with the library over the years. Now, as we head into the Family Day long weekend, the City of Lethbridge came out with a list of what is open and what is not on Monday. The Lethbridge Public Library main branch, the Crossings branch, and the Bookmobile will all be closed on Family Day, as will the Animal Shelter. The Helen Schuler Nature Center will be open from 11 till 4. It features a wide variety of indoor and outdoor self-guided activities. The Galt Museum will have a pancake brunch from 10 till 1. The event will feature live music and homemade crafts. Casa will be open from noon till 4 on Holiday Monday, featuring free activities featuring the arts. As for swimming pools, Fritz Sick Pool will be closed on Family Day. Both the Nicholas Sharon and Stan Civic pools will be open from 1 till 5. And the only skating arena open on Family Day is the Nicholas Sharon Arena from 12:45 till 2:45. Lethbridge Transit will run holiday service on Monday. The hours are from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. The federal food safety watchdog is warning people to do what they can to keep African swine fever out of Canada. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the disease is highly contagious and can be lethal for both domestic and wild pigs. there's no treatment or vaccine for the disease. The agency says an outbreak in Canada will have a major impact on our economy and the pork industry. The CFIA says farm workers, foreign exchange students, or hunters who travel to countries infected with the African swine fever could bring back contaminated food, clothing, and equipment. There's a lot of talk in our province about green energy cutting back on our emissions, especially in the agricultural sector. Bernie Cook, who heads up the School of Agriculture in Lethbridge College, says when it comes to electric farm equipment, there are still issues that farmers are trying to navigate through.
The big issue is there's enough power from electricity, but by the time you run around the field a couple times, you got to stop and plug your battery in. So the term that they come up with is energy density, and the fact that you can put a tank of diesel on there and run all day and have enough power to do that. So the companies are coming out with what we call a hybrid tractor now, and it looks like they're just looking for new technology to have a better battery pack, in a sense, that can store energy so that they don't have to stop and plug in as often.
Catch my full interview discussing modern agriculture and how the industry is trying to attract younger farmers. That's coming up after business news. According to a recent study, more than 40% of insect species are declining, and a third of them are now endangered. Professor Dan Johnson at the University of Lethbridge says the biggest problem the insect population is facing is a lack of data collected.
We're now in a lull where we hardly have any information. So it's gone downhill, 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 and now we're at the point where all we can do is throw up our arms and say, yeah, some are declining, but who knows what will happen, and who knows which ones are declining, and we're not even aware of it. And here's the problem. Not only do farmers depend on the so-called good bugs for pollination and control of pests, but so do birds, and so do other wildlife. But we don't even know which ones, to what extent, and so on. It's almost as if we had an international policy that said, you know, there's good countries and bad countries, take it from there, that's all we need to know. Or there's a bunch of ships and planes out there, that's it. We don't, that would be too little information. And that's the situation we have right now.
The global study also showed that the total mass of insects is falling by 2.5% a year, suggesting they could vanish completely within a century. Saskatchewan's legal challenge of the federal carbon tax plan is now in the hands of the province's Court of Appeal. A panel of judges has reserved its decision on whether the tax is constitutional or not after hearing arguments in Regina. Saskatchewan says Ottawa's plan in April to impose the tax infringes on provincial jurisdictions, while lawyers for the feds argued a carbon tax is in the national interest because of climate change. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick do not have their own carbon pricing plan and are subject to the new tax in April. A lawyer in the case suggests the Court of Appeal could take up to 6 months to a year to make its ruling. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced a fresh round of questions on the SNC-Lavalin controversy, which is dogging his government. Trudeau said while Ottawa is eager to protect jobs, it respects the rule of law on the SNC-Lavalin affair.
I had a number of conversations with Jody Wilson-Raybould over the past over the course of Sunday and Monday, and we discussed a broad range of things. But like I said, she made her decision, and I accept her decision even if I don't entirely understand it. We move forward with the cabinet shuffle. One of the senior members of our team stepped down, and we had to move things around on the team. If Scott Bryson had not stepped down from cabinet, Jody Wilson-Raybould would still be Minister of Justice and Attorney General. The discussions, as always, were ongoing, including around the cabinet table, which is where cabinet confidentiality kicks in and cabinet solidarity kicks in. So I won't go into the different elements of the argument, but I can reassure Canadians that, of course, as a government, we stand up for jobs. We look for ways to keep jobs, to create jobs in this country, and that's a responsibility we take seriously. But at the same time, we absolutely will defend and uphold the principles of judicial independence, of the rule of law, and that is what we did at all times.
Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Fillion, says there are many groups in Canada who were outraged at what transpired between PM Trudeau and Jody Wilson-Raybould. Ray says many felt Trudeau threw Wilson-Raybould under the bus.
Many Indigenous leaders are voicing their displeasure at the way she was treated, at the way she was blamed by the Prime Minister, thrown under the bus, as you said. The head of a BC group called the First Nations Summit told Canadian Press this week, it's a heavy blow to see how she has been treated. The Prime Minister has a lot of work to do to rebuild trust. And this is kind of surprising when you think about it, because Mr. Trudeau, when he came to power, he said repeatedly that there's no relationship that's more important to him and his government than the relationship between Ottawa and First Nations.
Catch my full interview with Ray Fillion discussing the latest in the Trudeau, Wilson-Raybould, SNC-Lavalin affair coming up in the second half of our show. Meanwhile, south of the border, U.S. President Donald Trump has his hands full with a lot of controversy. Trump says he expects legal challenges from his decision to declare a national emergency and erect barriers between the United States and Mexico.
So the order is signed, and I'll sign the final papers as soon as I get into the Oval Office, and we will have a national emergency, and we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there, and we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court. Just like the ban, they sued us in the Ninth Circuit, and we lost, and then we lost in the appellate division, and then we went to the Supreme Court, and we won.
U.S. Congress approved a border security compromise late yesterday that averted a second painful government shutdown. Money in the bill for borders barriers, about $1.4 billion worth, is far below the $5.7 billion Trump said he needed.
We got there. We didn't get there with a bill that I would have drawn. My bill, candidly, would look more like the bill that President Trump would have wanted. More money for the border security, more money for ICE. But we came up with an agreement that the vast majority of Americans could support.
This is not a loss for the President, but a win for the Department of Homeland Security and a significant step in the right direction for border security.
What this bill will not do, this bill will not fund the President's wall from sea to shining sea, a wall that he said Mexico would pay for. So we tried another path. We tried a bipartisan path of working together to iron out our differences and to come to an agreement.
An online petition to sell Montana to Canada has gone viral. The petition on change.org says the U.S. government should sell the northern state to Canada for $1 trillion. So far, the petition has gathered about 5,000 names. The petition says, quote, "We have too much debt and Montana is useless. Just tell them it has beavers or something." It's understandable why some Americans feel the need to begin selling off some of their states. The U.S. Treasury Board says their nation's debt is now over $22 trillion. A large fire rescue response was conducted at an apartment building in Bergen County, New Jersey last night. Heavy smoke and flames could be seen shooting out of the top and sides of the building. Firefighters could be seen working all around the structure trying to keep the fire from spreading to another building next door. There were no reports of any injuries. A Chicago area zoo received a nice Valentine's Day gift yesterday as a baby antelope calf was born. This little guy is named Valentino and weighs just 23 ounces. This African species, otherwise known as a Kirk dik-dik, is one of the smallest of its kind in the world. Fully grown, he'll only weigh about 14 pounds and measure 14 to 16 inches in height. There are currently 32 dik-dik antelopes in 17 North American zoos. That's so cute. It was on this date that the former Soviet Union last troops left Afghanistan, the U.S. got closer to war with Spain, and astronomer Galileo was born. This is Today in History for February the 15th.
February 15th, 1898.
We have remembered the Maine.
The U.S. battleship Maine mysteriously blows up in the harbor of Havana, Cuba, then a Spanish colony. More than 260 crew members on board are killed in the blast. War breaks out between the U.S. and Spain months later. 1989. The Soviet Union says the last of its troops have left Afghanistan, ending more than 9 years of military intervention. A few years later, the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan, establishing a theocracy and providing a base for Osama bin Laden. In 2001, bin Laden's al-Qaeda network masterminds the September 11th terrorist attacks in the United States. 1564. Galileo, the astronomer whose discoveries drew the wrath of the Catholic Church's Inquisition, is born in Pisa, Italy. And 1820.
Brothers, we must share your freedom. Help us and we will.
Susan B. Anthony, the suffragist who fought for the right for women to vote in America, is born in Adams, Massachusetts. Today in History, February 15th. Ross Simpson, The Associated Press.
A new segment we have on Bridge City News is called the Movie Mill Minute, featuring the owner of the mill, Mr. Len Binning. Let's have a look at a couple of the great family movies playing at the mill this Family Day long weekend.
Family Day is upon us, and that means reading week for many. Kids are out of school, and we've got great films showing here at the Movie Mill. We love being locally owned and operated, and we love serving the Lethbridge community. Come on down and share some time with us. It was 1964 that Julie Andrews first came on the scene in Mary Poppins, and now Disney's bringing us Mary Poppins Returns, starring Emily Blunt this time around as the never-aging Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins, you came back. You seem hardly to have aged at all. Really? One never discusses a woman's age, Michael.
If you've seen Transformers, you certainly know the character Bumblebee. Well, we've got his movie this week, and we see just exactly where he started in this Transformers prequel starring Haley Steinfeld.
Looking forward to seeing Bumblebee. You know, I was a big fan of the Beatles, or maybe Punch Buggies when I was a kid. Environment Canada issued another snowfall warning for our city today. Lots of snow here and some of the mountains as well. A complete look at the weather forecast and the ski report are coming up. Environment Canada issued another snowfall warning for our region today. We had heavy snow up to 10 centimeters of the white stuff. Tonight, more snow developing with a low near -20. Tomorrow, more flurries developing and expect a high of -17. Sunday, a mixture of sun and cloud with a high of -18. For Family Day, Holiday Monday, sunshine and a high of -11. Tuesday, the snow returns, but it should warm up to -6. Pretty much the same picture for Wednesday. Thursday, more snow developing and the mercury dropping to -11. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is +2 and an average low of -11. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1991 at 14 degrees. And the record low was a cold -32 in 1979. Sunrise was at 7:42, sunset at 5:49. Looking at how tomorrow shaping up across the country now, Vancouver will be mainly cloudy and 5 degrees. Victoria should see rain as well and 5. Periods of snow developing and -17 is on tap for Calgary on Saturday. Edmonton will also see lots of the white stuff and high of -16. A good chance of flurries of -15 for Regina. Snow and -16 is expected for Saskatoon tomorrow. Winnipeg will be mainly cloudy and -15. In the central part of the country, Toronto will be mainly sunny and warmer at -1. Ottawa will have a mixture of sun and cloud and should get up to -4. Montreal will have flurries of -4 degrees as well. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will be mainly cloudy and +1. Halifax, Nova Scotia had a rainfall warning today. Tomorrow, more rain and a high of 6 degrees. Charlottetown, PEI will receive showers and 6. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, light flurries, and they should see a high near 0 on Saturday. Our country's largest pipeline operators reporting higher than expected fourth quarter profits. Enbridge is reporting adjusted net income of $1.17 billion or 65 cents per share. That is up from 61 cents a share in the same quarter last year. Enbridge is crediting full oil and gas pipelines, synergies from its acquisition of Spectra Energy, and $7 billion of projects brought into service in the last year. More TransAlta coal mine employees could be laid off by the end of the month as the company continues its transition to natural gas. The United Steelworkers Union says the cut could involve 122 workers at the facility located just west of Edmonton. TransAlta would not confirm the number of jobs that will be affected. The Highvale mine is one of the TransAlta's 3 surface coal mines and the largest surface strip mine in Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined BlackBerry CEO John Chen at the company's Canada, Ontario location to announce a new $40 million investment. The funding is aimed at helping BlackBerry develop the next generation of self-driving cars and improve skills training for workers.
Today is a really good day for us and a big day for us because we're launching an effort with about a $300 million budgets to now get to the next generation of the safety software for the autonomous platform. I like to use the word platform versus beyond just the vehicle. Vehicle obviously is the #1 user of these technology, but the platform will include everything we just talked about, including stuff like planes and drones. So we are now going to do a lot more research and kick off another program to get the next generation safety and connectivity technology.
Cineplex says its net income was down 5.5% in the fourth quarter as it saw a drop in movie theater attendance. The Toronto-based entertainment company recorded net income of $27.2 million or 43 cents a share. That was down from last year's 46 cents per share. Attendance at Cineplex theaters was down 3.2% from a year earlier. Revenue, however, was up slightly to $428.2 million, thanks to an increase in box office revenue per patron and concession revenue. The Canadian Real Estate Association says national home sales saw their weakest January in 4 years. CREA says sales through the MLS were down 4% from last year to just under 24,000 properties. But sales in December were up 3.6%, and the number of newly listed homes advanced 1%. The average price for all types of residential property sold was $455,000. That is down 5.5% from January of 2018. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, police are dealing with a barrage of complaints about a late-night Amber Alert issued in the case of a missing 11-year-old Toronto area girl. They say it appears as though some people value their own convenience over the safety of the child. Ria Rajkumar was found dead in her father's home in Brampton a short time after police issued the Amber Alert. The alert helped lead to her father's arrest about 130 kilometers north of Toronto. Police plan to charge the father with first-degree murder. Many Indigenous groups are upset at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion will explain next. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Do you love classic automobiles and vintage motorbikes? Come out to the Southern Alberta Antique and Classic Automobile Club's Early Bird Swap Meet on Saturday, February 16th at Lethbridge's Exhibition Park, beginning at 8 a.m. This event fills all 4 pavilions. See your favorite classic cars and discover unique finds like antiques, vintage clothing, collectibles, and so much more. Admission is $5 per person. For more information, visit exhibitionpark.ca/events. What are you doing on Family Day? Come to the Galt Museum and Archives on Monday, February 18th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for a delicious pancake brunch with live music and homemade crafts. You can also check out the Recollecting Home exhibit and take part in a special treasure hunt. Admission is free. For details, visit galtmuseum.com. The Paws Society is holding its annual pool tournament and silent auction on Sunday, February 24th at Shots Billiard Club and Lounge, with doors opening at noon. Registration is $25 and players can register up to the day of the tournament. Donations for the silent auction are greatly appreciated. Come on out and support a worthy cause. For more information, call Joan at 403-732-5708 or visit pawsociety.com. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The talk around the water coolers these days is the SNC-Lavalin, Justin Trudeau, Wilson-Raybould affair. Now, joining me now from Ottawa is our parliamentary reporter, Ray Fillion. Ray, our nation's capital has been rocking and buzzing since Jody Wilson-Raybould resigned from cabinet.
Big time, Hal, and this is a serious political, I don't want to use the word scandal, but it sure looks like it could be a big scandal. And a lot of people speculate that it could actually be big enough to take the Trudeau Liberal government down. Allegations of political interference in a legal matter, pressure that was allegedly placed on Jody Wilson-Raybould, who used to be Justin Trudeau's justice minister until the cabinet shuffle that he had on the 14th of January. And the thing is, the narrative around the whole thing, her demotion and stuff, has been changing a lot. First of all, on Monday, the Prime Minister holds a news conference in Vancouver, BC, in which he says, you know, I met twice over the past couple of days with Minister Wilson-Raybould. She reminded me, he said, of a conversation we had last fall in which I reminded her that any final decision was hers and hers alone. And the fact that she's still in cabinet means, says the Prime Minister, that she agrees with me. Well, lo and behold, a couple of hours later, Jody Wilson-Raybould met with Justin Trudeau again, this time to tender her resignation. We still don't know what she told him, what the reason for her resigning was. The Prime Minister wouldn't answer that question on Wednesday afternoon when he was holding another news conference in Sudbury. And the next day, Jody Wilson-Raybould published her letter of resignation in which she thanked Canadians at large. Not a word about the former Prime Minister. It was very, very cold in terms of resignation letter. And then on Tuesday night in Winnipeg, the Prime Minister counterattacked. He really threw Jody Wilson-Raybould under the bus, saying that, hey, if anyone had put pressure on her, it was her duty to come forward to talk to me about it. She didn't do that. So he basically threw her under the bus, and now he's probably made an enemy of her. So chances are she'll be looking for revenge.
Now, Ray, the question remains, will Jody Wilson-Raybould actually speak? We want to hear her side of the story here.
Everyone wants to hear what she has to say. The opposition parties tried to convince a Commons committee to have her as a witness. The Liberals used their majority to quash that request. I think it's pretty obvious when you look at her resignation letter that she does want to speak. She says in that letter, I'm aware that many Canadians wish for me to speak on matters that have been in the media over the last week. I am in the process of obtaining legal advice, and she's hired a big lawyer for this, former Supreme Court Justice Thomas Cromwell, as counsel. So she wants to speak. The big question is, how much is she legally allowed to say publicly about what went on behind closed doors? Because as a former Attorney General for the Government of Canada, she's bound by two things. First of all, solicitor-client privilege. The government and the Prime Minister were her clients, so she's not allowed to disclose what was said in private unless the Prime Minister gives her the right to do that. The other thing that she's bound by is cabinet confidence, which is a principle that has been in place for many, many years, which is designed to ensure that everything that ministers discuss behind closed doors remains a secret, so that ministers are free to discuss the big issues freely without fear that things are going to be made public. But she's hired Mr. Cromwell, a well-known jurist, someone who knows the law very well. He's going to advise her as to how much she's going to be allowed to disclose. I feel like she really wants to speak. The opposition wants her to lift the veil on exactly what went on behind closed doors. The question is, will she, and how will she do it if she does it?
Now, the Ethics Commissioner has decided to investigate the matter, but Ray, really, will it matter?
Well, it could matter. I mean, if he finds wrongdoing, it could matter. And it didn't take long for Mr. Dion, the federal ethics commissioner, to decide that it was worth investigating the whole matter, because two NDP MPs filed their requests to him on Friday of last week. And then the next business day, on Monday, he said, you know what? I looked at the issue. I think it's worth investigating. And this is the 5th time in less than 3.5 years that the federal ethics commissioner is going to be looking into a member of Justin Trudeau's cabinet. Justin Trudeau was investigated twice. There was, of course, his trip to the Aga Khan's private island a couple of years ago, for which he was raked over the coals. He also broke 4 sections of the Conflict of Interest Act, including one that prohibits the receipt of gifts unless they're from friends and relatives. His minister, Dominique LeBlanc, was also blamed. Of course, there was an investigation into the finance minister, Minister Morneau. Now the SNC Lavalin case. The Prime Minister reacted to Mr. Dion's request, Mr. Dion's decision to investigate by saying he welcomes the investigation. He said, and I quote, "This is an issue that has been much talked about over the past few days, and I think it's extremely important that Canadians can continue to have confidence in our system." Mary Dawson, Mr. Dion's predecessor, would take roughly a year to a year and a half before making rulings. Mr. Dion, so far, he's been working faster. So chances are we could have a report before Canadians go to the polls next October.
I was going to ask you, do you think a lot of Canadians will have a good enough memory to remember everything that's happened here with Justin Trudeau, the SNC Lavalin affair, and some of the other ethical issues you were just discussing?
Yeah, that remains to be seen, but I can tell you that the opposition parties, especially in an election year, are going to do everything in their power to remind Canadians of those things.
Now, Indigenous and women's rights groups are also pretty upset with the way the Prime Minister threw Jody Wilson-Raybould under the bus, Ray.
Yeah, she was the first Aboriginal person to become Justice Minister, Federal Justice Minister in Canada. Her appointment to that position when Justin Trudeau was elected in 2015 was a major symbol. And now many Indigenous leaders are voicing their displeasure at the way she was treated, at the way she was blamed by the Prime Minister, thrown under the bus, as you said. The head of a BC group called the First Nations Summit told Canadian Press this week, "It's a heavy blow to see how she has been treated. The Prime Minister has a lot of work to do to rebuild trust." And this is kind of surprising when you think about it, because Mr. Trudeau, when he came to power, he said repeatedly that there's no relationship that's more important to him and his government than the relationship between Ottawa and First Nations. So it looks like he's got some bridges to repair. Many of Mr. Trudeau's own MPs are kind of disappointed with the way things have turned out. You probably saw some tweets this week from a couple of Liberal MPs, including the president of the Treasury Board, Jane Philpott, who basically voiced support for her friend Jody Wilson-Raybould. So yeah, a lot of people are left in Ottawa scratching their heads, and a lot of people, even Liberals, are kind of disappointed with the way this whole controversy has been handled so far by Mr. Trudeau and his team in the PMO, the Prime Minister's office.
So, Ray, at the heart of the controversy is how Ottawa should really handle criminal charges against SNC Lavalin.
Yeah, it's a big company that's headquartered in Montreal. It employs thousands of people, mostly in vote-rich Quebec, but also in other provinces. And the company is facing fraud and corruption charges. That stems from roughly $48 million in bribes that the company paid to officials in Libya to try to get contracts in that country between 2001 and 2011. So it's facing fraud and corruption charges. The problem is the company is arguing that the executives who took part in those misdeeds are gone. The company is trying to save furniture here. They say they employ thousands of people right across Canada and in many other countries. And they're saying that the company needs to survive. And if it's found guilty of those charges, it would be banned from getting government contracts for a period of 10 years. So think about the high number of jobs that could be lost. So the Liberals introduced a provision in the budget, which is something that already exists in other countries like the United States and the UK. It's called a remedial agreement, which would basically have the company acknowledge its sins, pay a fine, promise to never do it again, and in exchange, the company would avoid a criminal prosecution. maybe Jody Wilson-Raybould was against that idea, and that's why she was resigned from her job as Justice Minister. We have yet to find out. But yeah, big debate as to whether or not SNC-Lavalin should be granted permission to apply for one of those remedial agreements with federal prosecutors.
Now, this controversy surrounding SNC-Lavalin, Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Prime Minister, is fueling some speculation of an early election call. What are you hearing?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Justin Trudeau promised that the next election would be according to the law on October 21st. But given the fact that the government is feeling a lot of heat over the Jody Wilson-Raybould SNC-Lavalin affair, given the fact that the ethics commissioner, as we discussed earlier, could table his report, which could be embarrassing to the government shortly before the end of summer, just before Canadians begin to follow the election campaign. Also, given the fact that Vice Admiral Mark Norman's trial is scheduled to begin next August, he's also facing some pretty serious charges, and some people in government could be in serious trouble because there are also some allegations of political interference in that case. So to try and, some people here on the Hill are speculating that Justin Trudeau might be tempted to get Canadians to vote before all of this happens, perhaps late this spring or in early summer. The opposition parties say they're ready to go and they're ready to have a campaign in the spring if need be, although few people actually believe that's going to happen. It looks, in all scenarios, it looks like Justin Trudeau will stick to the law and have the vote on October 21st.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is campaigning in Burnaby South, hoping to win that seat in the by-election later this month. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was also out in Burnaby South, drumming up support for the Liberal candidate, and the Prime Minister received a little bit of heckling, Ray.
Yeah, not everyone was there to cheer him on. Justin Trudeau, since becoming Prime Minister in 2015, has campaigned in every single riding that has had a by-election, and of course Burnaby South was not going to be an exception. He was there earlier this week to campaign, to trying to help out his Liberal candidate, who's going to be facing Mr. Singh, as you said, on February 25th. He was there, took part in a rally in which some protesters managed to find their way in. They were there to voice their displeasure with Mr. Trudeau's government decision to buy the Trans Mountain Pipeline and its planned expansion. Some shouted directly at the Prime Minister, who didn't miss a beat delivering his stump speech. As you said, the by-election is February 25th. Crucial by-election for Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP. If he fails to win that seat, he's out as leader. That's what a lot of NDPers are telling us. The good news for him is that according to data that people have been able to gather on the ground, he's leading, apparently. But of course, the election is still a few days away, so we'll have to see what happens on the 25th.
Yeah, it should be very interesting, you bet. Tensions with China continue, and Ray, the Trade Diversification Minister, says business with that country will probably slow down.
Yeah, which doesn't really come as a surprise. As you know, the Chinese have jailed 2 Canadians on suspicions that they put China's national security in danger. So a lot of business people we hear are wary. They don't feel like traveling to China. They don't think it's a very welcoming country these days, given the diplomatic dispute between Ottawa and Beijing. So the federal trade diversification minister, Jim Carr, acknowledged that, and he says that trade will probably slow down between the 2 countries over the next few months. He also said, Mr. Carr, that he's confident that Canada and China will eventually work through their differences, but in the meantime, trade is likely to go through what he called a difficult period.
Let me ask you something, Ray. I want to get your feeling on the Hill right now. With all of the controversy surrounding Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, is Andrew Scheer a little more confident these days, the federal Tory leader?
He sounds very confident. The Tories feel like they have, they can smell blood in the water here. They're all smiles. Right now, the spotlight is on Justin Trudeau for all the wrong reasons, and they're very happy. This is, and I was talking to one of their strategists earlier today. He says that the biggest challenge is actually to keep the story alive long enough so we can talk about it until the next election. But they're absolutely thrilled, and they feel that they have really something to rally Canadian public opinion against the Liberals.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that federal election myself. Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Fillion, joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks so much, Ray.
You're welcome.
Agriculture is still one of the foundational cornerstones of our country. We've seen a lot of changes of how things operate within the ag business. Joining me now live in studio to discuss this is Bernie Cook, Chair of the School of Agriculture at Lethbridge College. Welcome to Bridge City News, Bernie.
Thank you for having us.
So farming and ranching has changed a lot over the number of decades, the last 10, 20, 30 years. Tell me about some of the new technology, how it's maybe helped farmers.
A lot of it is, there's an awful lot of things that are kind of new and novel. Probably the best one is the auto steer, where someone that has a, let's say a 40-foot implement, if they can drive straight and so that they're not overlapping and save 2 feet on that, that's 5% decrease in inputs. So that's probably the easiest one that we've picked up on, and if you're driving down the road and you can see how straight it is, it's not that he's just paying attention, it's actually auto steer and steered by GPS. So
that's nice.
Probably the most noticeable one that we have.
Good straight cut then, right?
Exactly.
How about autonomous vehicles? Is that going to be just around the bend for farmers too?
I think it is. It's available. I guess the issue is if I personally had $1 million piece of equipment, would I trust it and leave it out there? Maybe I'm getting too old and I wouldn't trust it, but it can be. But we still have issues with low spots and wet spots and power poles and that sort of thing. So the technology is there. It's a matter of whether the producer is willing and able to let himself trust that equipment to do the job.
Now I can imagine too with software, kind of speeds things up, maybe helps farmers as well when it comes to new technology. But is there a big expense as well with that, Bernie?
There is, and I think that's part of the reason why we see that the larger farms are taking it on. They can spread that cost over tens of thousands of acres rather than a smaller operator. Now, when you gather that information in, it's a matter of what we can do with that. So you're gathering it in, and this acre has this production or needs these inputs or has this disease, but what is the return on that? So oftentimes there's a lot of data, and people talk about big data, but it's a matter of fine-tuning it and making it cost-effective to make those changes.
How about soil and crop sensors? How effective are they?
They're very effective, but again, they're limited by how well we use them. If they're not placed properly and recording properly, and we're looking at the information and we're getting too much detail, sometimes I think that we can put too much emphasis on them. We also have other environmental changes that we can't control. So for example, if we set that up for an irrigation pivot and we go through and water and the next day we get a downpour, then the sensor really didn't help. So we still have a lot of variation in there, whereas in a greenhouse or something like that, we have a perfect condition. So
where are we at right now when it comes to biological pest control and growth enhancements?
It's a little bit slower than people would maybe hope. We do have some agents that are being tested. Again, we have to be conscious that they have to go through Agriculture Canada so that they can be released. For example, there's a toad in Australia that was released to help control, it's a tick there, that beetle that affects the sugarcane. Mm-hmm. And so they found out that, well, the toad would rather eat these other pests, and now the toad is a big problem down there in Australia.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why we like to look at these biological agents, but we have to be very careful as we start releasing them and what effect they'll have on the rest of nature.
What about organic farming? A lot of people I talk to these days, Hal, just eat organic, that's all you have to eat. Where are we at when it comes to organic farming? And are farmers embracing organic farming even more?
You know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of producers are going through and they're going organic because in the retail it does sell for more. The one concern personally that I do have, and as we mentioned before, it's a bit of a soapbox that I have, when we talk about trying to feed the world by 2050 and there's going to be so many people around, people in Canada, there's only about 10% of our paycheck goes to food. And so you and I have the choice of buying organic or not buying organic or you know, whatever we want to have, antibiotics or whatever the topic is. When we look at the rest of the world, people in Africa are spending about 70% on food. And so they don't have the option of spending twice as much. So we need to really look at it and be careful that it's not just a marketing ploy, because scientifically I don't think there's a lot of difference in the quality and the shelf life and that sort of thing.
What about GMOs? You know, you hear a lot of that in the news, and genetically modified organisms. It's somewhat controversial right now, but some people also have health concerns about GMOs. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts, again, I come from the background of science, and so I want people to show me. And I want results to be repeatable. And So if you go into the results and you look at exactly what GMOs are and what the purpose of them is, one of the major things that we use GMOs for is to adapt crops to different growing situations. So drought resistance or disease resistance or those sorts of things. So if we're looking at feeding the world, I don't think that we have a lot of option but to adopt these things. Now, some of them get black eyes. There's a couple of reports that have been out there, but they're really not repeatable if you really do check the science.
Let's talk about, we mentioned autonomous vehicles earlier. What about electric vehicles and that technology? Do you see that becoming more mainstream?
It is, and there's a couple of articles out there, and the experts in the field talk about a hybrid vehicle now. The big issue is there's enough power from electricity, but by the time you run around the field a couple times, you've got to stop and plug your battery in. So the term that they come up with is energy density, and the fact that you can put a tank of diesel on there and run all day and have enough power to do that. So the companies are coming out with what we call a hybrid tractor now, and it looks like they're just looking for new technology to have a better battery pack, in a sense, that can store energy so that they don't have to stop and plug in as often.
Now, you have experience with grains, but also livestock as well. What were your thoughts when the new Canada Food Guide came out? They said, you got to get your proteins from plants.
Exactly. I guess,
what are your thoughts?
I guess my thoughts, and I shouldn't be old school, but you know, we ascended the food chain, and here we are. We're going through and eating more plants than animal. We had a Tiffin conference a couple weeks ago, and their comments were that we're sending our red meat around the world to different countries that now can afford it, and we're eating crickets here on this end. So I guess it's a matter of flavor and sustainability. We have to look at where our beef is raised and that sort of thing. The food guide is kind of an interesting deal. Personally, I'm a lover of red meat. I love the fact that when I consume my amino acids, they're in the right profile, and I don't have to go and pick and choose and play Tetris with my protein sources to make sure that I get enough. So,
I guess we know where you stand. That's good. Okay, Bernie. How about some of the ag programs that are coming online now at Lethbridge College? Talk to our viewers about some of those.
We're pretty excited. We've got 3 different possibilities. So when our students come into the program, they kind of have a little bit of a perception of what they'd like to study, but they don't really know. And there's so many possibilities. So what we like to do is let them come in and kind of have a cross-section of plants, animals, business, let them get a taste for what they'd like, and then they can take a major in one of those 3 fields. So an animal major, plant major, we have what we call the Ag Enterprise Management Program, the business program. And then from there, our program ladders really well into a degree at the U of L or at the University of Saskatchewan. And right now, our primary focus is we're working on an applied technology degree at the college. And so all of this new techie stuff that's going on and being able to use the big data and the blockchain and those sorts of concepts, we're going to prepare our students with another 2 years of education, and so that they can be more prepared to you know, run all of these new things that are coming out. Recent studies said the average age of a North American farmer now is 55 years old. I mean, in my books, that's not that old. But some other people think that is getting old, right? So how can we attract more young people to go into the ag business and become farmers? I think one of the things that's happened is people in the agriculture world think that if they're not an actual primary producer, so they're on the land and raising livestock or grains, that they're not involved in agriculture. My challenge is for them to come get an education and then go back, and you pick a spot in any kind of background, be it business or science or service or sales or whatever, and there's a spot in agriculture for them. So as we can keep those individuals in agriculture and keep that talent in there, I think that's the key to the future, and that will automatically drive the age of that producer down. Have you had mature students as well sign up, people that have maybe been laid off in the energy sector, want to try something different? Certainly, certainly. We've had quite a cross-section of students, and a handful of non-farm students. About 10–15% of our students are not from farms, and some of them really do make some of our best students because they don't take anything for granted. They feel like they have to learn everything from the ground up, and so they've done very, very well. How about students from other countries, not just here in Canada or the United States? You know, we've had a couple of students from India, a couple from Japan. We haven't had a huge cross-section of students from there, and So that's something that we're looking at as well.
So what are some of the biggest challenges the agriculture industry is facing right now?
I guess a couple of the biggest challenges, we're kind of stuck with being the little brother for the states, and so a lot of their policy affects us. And so when Trump says to jump, we don't like to, but we have to, and so we react to some of that policy. Part of it is the issue that we're marketing more of a raw product, and the more value added that we can put into our products, I think the more adapted we are, and we're not going to have to just rely on shipping it out and someone else making money off of it. The other issue, I think, is trying to keep our youth in agriculture and keep them involved and let them know that there is a future here.
Any tariffs from the United States impacting things here? You? I mean,
we've
talked about steel and aluminum, right?
Yeah.
But what else?
Yeah. Well, a couple of them. The dairy guys are getting a black eye, and they're getting some of their market taken away. Under the table, as far as poultry, we're not just marketing chicken. There's different spent hens and different levels of meat products that get shipped. So if you read the fine print on a lot of those export agreements and tariffs and things, there's a lot of clawback, and like I say, it's tough being the little brother.
So what do you say to the farming family that says, you know what, Bernie, I'm done. I've had enough. I've been losing money for far too long. I'm getting out. So what do you say to that person that says, you know what, there's still hope?
Yeah, it's kind of tough because there is the economical situation. Sometimes they're just too small. I think the main key is communication. Before they get to that stage, they should be talking with their neighbors. They should be talking as a family, looking for alternative markets, looking for alternative products that they can produce. We're maybe not going to be the biggest producer, but we can be the best at producing some other niche market or that sort of thing. There's a lot of products out there, and we don't all have to be in beef or barley or wheat or canola. There's a lot of other things that we've seen that a lot of students have done very well.
I have a lot of friends in Saskatchewan, and they say to me, we've got wheat covered. We produce more wheat than you do in Alberta. We produce more canola. Is that true? Is Saskatchewan still one of the front runners, or is it even Ontario maybe?
Well, I'm not sure who is on the top of the pile there. I'm not going to even try to dig that one out. But when you look at it, it's the next product that comes in. So we've got different products. We've got lentils or beans or potatoes or sugar beets or hemp or mint or whatever it may happen to be, you know. We've got students that are raising tilapia, or others are setting up greenhouses and that sort of thing. I think that as long as a person is not limited by having to do something that's conventional and it's out there already, I think that there's a lot of potential for people.
Are farmers open to the potential of maybe raising hemp? Not THC hemp like cannabis, but I'm talking about hemp that's used in car parts, that's used in making driveways stronger with the concrete.
Certainly.
There's some good money in that.
There's a lot of potential for different things like that. And the trick is you don't have to be the supply the world. Like I say with this tilapia, we've got a alumni that they sell fish into Calgary and Edmonton. And there's not going to be 40 or 50 of those producers, but he's doing very well himself. You know, so you've got to look for those individual opportunities.
Bernie Cook, Chair of the School of Agriculture at Lethbridge College, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you so much for having us.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.